The year is 1947, as we like to call it, the year of the UFO sighting, where at least 300 sightings were actually done during that one year. Now, one particular sighting is the holy grail of all holy grails of UFO sightings, the Roswell, New Mexico incident.
This is the Texas Tinfoil Podcast.
What's going on, guys? I'm here with my co-host and longtime friend, Mr. Texas.
So,
And I'm Mowgli. Let's get to the bread and butter, as they say. So I have a timeline of how the incident goes down, like verbatim. And then we know that there are like two other stories that, what we like to call, like everybody's out there and they saw something, and you got that one guy that thinks he saw like flashing beams of light from the sky, the homeless guy that's over there doing things and saying he saw something. But here's my
everybody's
timeline.
a witness. Everybody's special. Everybody saw everything.
That's what
You know
they
that
say,
goes.
that
Yeah,
guy.
that's what they do when the cameras show up. Anyway,
True that. So the timeline goes like this: June 14, 1947 is when the crash, I say quotation mark, crash, happened in Foster Ranch. Now, speeding up a little ahead, July 4th, 1947, which is ironically Independence Day, right? A farmer named Mac Brazel collected these materials from the crash site that he found. So, what was it? 3 days after that, which is July 7th, 1947, Brazel decides he's going to go to the local sheriff, which is George Wilcox, to show what he found. So then Wilcox, this is where the chain of command, as they say, would start happening. So Wilcox decides he's going to contact Butch Blanchard, which Blanchard is running the Roswell Air Force, and it's home to the 109th Bombardment Group, which deployed, of course, we all know the atomic bomb, right, for World War II.
Yeah, the 509th. Yeah.
So that being said, so now Blanchard's in on this, and he's like, "Oh, okay. So let's see what's gonna happen. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna have to contact our general, which is at the time that was General Roger Ramey. Ramey was like, so Blanchard calls Ramey, and he tells Ramey, "Hey, man, there's a supposable crash site of a flying object. We don't know if it's a plane. We don't know what it is. We need somebody to come in and assess it for us, because if it's one of ours, we need to find out what happened and what went wrong, basically. You know what I mean?" So General Ramey's like, "Okay, well, let's call these people." So he decides he's going to call on Major Marcel, which is Jesse Marcel, which he is actually the 109th. He's their intel officer. He sends them out to go assess the crash and retrieve samples to see, what they are, stuff like that. So he goes and does that. July 8th, 1947, Blanchard then decides he's going to call Lieutenant Walter Halt to issue a press conference about the, I believe, because they believe they found a flying saucer. There we go. The quotation marks again, flying saucer. So I wrote it down here somewhere. Let me see. The Roswell newspaper ran an article that says RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in the Roswell region. They didn't say where, but they just said Roswell region. Well, we all know it's New Mexico, but they didn't say specifics at that time. But here's the funny thing that gets to me though, about this whole thing is that, as soon as they run that the same day, the Air Force decides they're gonna change the story, General, they're gonna say, "Oh no, it's not a flying saucer. We're not, let's put on our tinfoil hats here, guys. Let's get to the bread and butter on this one. This is where the shit gets real sus about it because, you're looking at this." And didn't they just say, "Oh, we found a flying saucer"? Now they're changing the story, and General Rami at this time, while all this is going on, General Rami, he orders the crash remains to get sent to Fort Worth, Texas, so he can personally inspect them. Not just inspect them, but he's getting the help of a weather officer to actually help him to explain, to ID these remains of the aircraft that they find, supposedly. So the story is, when they changed the story, they decided they're going to say it was a weather balloon that crashed, hence why they had the weather officer come and detail and ID this thing to make sure that's what it is. And after that, there was another press release with this stuff, with this material that was ID'd. You see, I think it was Blanchard that was in I want to say Blanchard was the one that was in the newspaper sporting, like he was all like, a model and stuff. He's modeling with the crash stuff.
It was Ramey, Marcel, and Dubose were the three that were in the press release photos.
Is that what it was? Because when I saw it, I saw one where I saw Blanchard like leaning over, and like looking at the stuff. But anyways, while that's going on, here's the kicker. Here's what gets even crazier during this whole time that this is happening. Brazel decides later on he comes out and says the stuff he found was rubber, tinfoil, and I quote, "a rather tough paper and sticks." And that's when all that happened, everybody was like, this guy, I don't know, man. And then next thing you know, everyone forgets about the Roswell incident because it was supposedly a weather balloon. But here's the other thing. There's another story. They said when they went to the crash site, they actually found dead aliens, bro. It was probably my Uncle Paco and stuff, just probably drinking some beer.
So we're mixing like three different like actual narratives, right? That are being mixed up here. There's Operation Mogul that was happening at the same time,
right?
As this incident. Operation Mogul, for people that aren't familiar with what that is they were basically trying to set out a bunch of specific weather balloons. Instead of only going up for the weather, that's what they called it originally, was just a weather balloon, right? And that's kind of like that's kind of been like an ongoing answer for everything. Hey, well, we found an unknown craft. Oh, it's a weather balloon.
A weather balloon.
Like it's just become a joke, like about it like all the time, and you're just kind of sitting here like, hold on, guys, this we can't just be calling it a weather balloon all the time. This is like prior to swamp gas, right? Because that's another thing,
right?
Everything always is. All right, so the original first story you covered was the
weather balloon.
The weather balloon, and they used that cover story that it was a weather balloon. Technically, it was the same material they used for these weather balloons, but it wasn't only for weather. Project Mogul was basically to set up a long chain of these balloons, basically a bunch of condoms floating up in the air with some very specific listening devices, because they were trying to set up equipment that they would drift off, over the ocean, and use as a listening device to test for to check for atomic tests done by the Russians, and that was their original thought. In the end, in 1948, that project was shit canned because it cost too much. It was too complicated.
They just basically scrapped it right then and there.
Well,
God.
this is supposedly like flight number 4 or test number 4 was the one that crashed in Roswell, and the reason that got caught up into just being a regular weather balloon was because there was no Air Force at the time. Like we have like the Air Force and the Army are separate now, but it was just the Army Air Force. So Roswell Army Air Force, or RAAF, they had a Roswell Army Air Base. That's where they were situated. And if you pull up the maps, you can look at some of the where they are now, like by Alamogordo and all of those areas are heavy military presence and military bases. All that stuff is just north of Fort Bliss, which is El Paso area in Texas.
Excuse me.
So like, yeah, you got all this cluster of military gear and equipment and everything there. The second story is, and Corona Ranch, that's where supposedly 2 discs crashed, and that's where they had the alien bodies. And that's
those were the ones that they were discovered, right? The ones that
yeah,
I think it's my Uncle Paco, but I'm not too sure. He might be up there just drinking some whiskey or something,
some tequila.
He's the uncle that you give him money and he disappears for a minute. There he was. He's in Roswell.
Are you sure? Yeah. For all we know, bro, it's probably one of those 2 aliens that the Mexican government put out. Those aliens that look like they're made of cake. Like, for real, bro. And out of nowhere, Mexico was like, this is
hell yeah.
Well, I don't know if we're gonna do this. So
Jesus Christ.
We're not gonna be one up by the Americans, not by these guys in the United States over here. So they're like, guys, we have aliens that we brought from Chile, and they bring out these aliens made of fucking paper mache or cake. Or, I'm not sure. I thought they were like a really bad wedding cake. I'm not sure what's going on, but anyway, apparently that's what they're doing. I was like, I didn't know. Yeah, I was like, I was like, man, I don't know what they're doing nowadays, but apparently we're in there was a space war and shit. Now we're in an alien body war. I don't know.
That's it, bro.
But so the second one was the second scenario is where there's the
2 aliens,
UFO
right?
crashed, and then this happens. This is a story that's added later. The original story was just the weather balloon thing, and they lied in order to cover up the fact that they were trying to develop a system to listen to the Russians, right?
Right.
The third story, or the third, I guess, perspective of this is it was an actual Russian device or aircraft that was shot down over. Well, I mean, that's pretty much at this time in New Mexico. That's like the epicenter where 509th bombing group is. This is the only group in the United States that's actively training to drop nuclear weapons anywhere in the world.
But wasn't
and how to handle them for them?
That metal that they found, though, weren't they saying some bizarre shit like when we found this piece of metal from the crash site? One of the witnesses, I think it was actually the general. I think it was Rami that they interviewed, and he's at this time
Marcel. Rami never gave any interviews. I don't believe.
Was it Marcel? He was retired. He's a retired. But
it was Marcel. He was the one that said that. He was the one that said that he stopped and he had a piece of the craft that he was like trying to fold and flex and would try to light on fire and it didn't do any damage.
And then he said,
"You know what, man?
I took a hammer to it." He said he even took a hammer to it, and he
hold on.
Oh shit! He brought the tinfoil hat.
I feel like I just threw on the tinfoil real quick, bro. I feel like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm all about conspiracies and I'm all about things not adding up and the math ain't mathing. I'm all about that, but I'm not saying that there isn't anything weird about this story, but I can see how shit would spiral out of control, right? But anyhow, so we're not really doing the story justice, but basically those are the three scenarios that everyone's kind of not necessarily arguing over, but are saying is the most talked about three
Right.
scenarios. All the stuff I was looking through, I mean, again, we went over this for a few weeks, but all the stuff that I've looked through, and other than like all the people, you can tell people have added things down the road where they're like, oh, here was a news clipping I took out, and it's obviously a doctored photo. But for the real photos, if you want to get into that, there are photos of the equipment that they recovered.
Right.
Marcel said that at the very beginning, he said that none of that ever happened. It wasn't until way after the fact when, I mean, it was already past the 50s and the 60s where Marcel was at that point saying, oh, it was really a UFO, guys. It was really this and that. Marcel actually in one of the documents that I read, and it's not like a government document. It's like an interview that he gave. He actually said that he flew the UFO wreckage because he was a pilot. RAAF. He flew it back over there, and then they put it in storage and dismantled it and did all this stuff. So I don't know if any of that is true because this didn't happen until way after the fact.
But you would think, first of all, how the fuck did he learn how to fly a flying saucer? You would kind of think that's pretty advanced. You know, me, if I'm a pilot, okay, I get it. You know, yeah, the man was a pilot, but at the same time, it would be kind of a little complicated if you think about it, man. It's not like an airplane.
Well, I mean, if it's an alien
get over
craft
there and do that, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's an alien craft. How are you going to know how to use it?
What you gonna put your are you gonna put your hands in there into the little thing, the little goose stuff?
You know what I think about right now? I think of like Independence Day.
Is that what Independence Day?
Where like Will Smith and fucking Jeff Goldblum, bro? They're just like flying an alien craft. Like I don't know about all that, bro. I don't believe that part, to be honest. Like there has to be some kind of evidence or some kind of proof or something. And
so something. So if you know we look at aliens, they're really an advanced civilization. If aliens are real, you know, we got skeptics. But if they are, think about this. If they are real, then that means they're an advanced race. So that means they would have some advanced technology of some sort that it would be kind of complex to kind of like just figure out, oh, I'm a pilot. I'm gonna go ahead and fly the thing, and I'm magically gonna fly it into the army base, and I got this, you know. Just God, come on.
I don't know, bro. I mean, we should probably do the story some justice first. Talk about what was said, and then we can probably clown on the rest because for the second scenario, whenever they flew all this to the Fort Worth Air Force Base and dropped everything off. Let me see if I have the. Let's see.
Do you have the actual document?
Fort Worth Army Airfield. Major Marcel brought the wreckage personally to Roger Ramey for him to do all of this. And, of course, that's when they did the press conference with Major Marcel and Colonel Thomas Dubose. They were all in the photographs.
Right.
The famous photographs where the guy's kneeling down, pulling up the tinfoil, and he's got some sticks and rubber and shit. So the guy's over here showing off. This is all it was. Maybe that's the thing. So whenever this resurfaced at a later date, there was all these claims of these UFOs. They blew it off as weather balloons. And then there were people saying, well, what about the bodies? This is where I have major issues because the Air Force lied, right? I mean, that's nothing new. I should say.
When does the military not lie? I feel
like. Well, I mean, you got to understand.
I think military are like their own yakuza. You know, they just go in there and start being gangsters. This is my stuff. I'm not going to show you anything.
I mean, you have to take into account that the military is like most people say. Well, there's no way the government can keep a secret, and I'm like, well, maybe. You got to be a little more specific when you say the government because the government's a big name, and there's a lot of stuff under that umbrella of United States
There's
government.
there's like different entities.
One of the
depending on which one.
side of the government is the Central Intelligence Agency, right? Those guys, shit comes out down the road, and unless something's blown wide open by real investigative journalism and journalists, and like unless somebody really does that, or someone just steps out and blows the whistle, a lot of that shit remains hidden for a lot of fucking years, so it becomes declassified down the road. So they can keep a secret. The FBI, not so much. They're FBI. They're famous but incompetent most of the time, right? I mean, what's their favorite catchphrase? He was on our radar. They were on our radar, right? Well, you didn't fucking do anything. Familiar with how the military works. The higher up you get in your ability to know this and know that, and the more strategic of knowledge you have, and the more secrets they tell you, the more of your rights you give up. Meaning, well, I'm gonna have a fair trial. I'm gonna throw that shit out the window. Fuck all that, bro. Like you're holding national secrets, military secrets. No, man. The military does not play with that shit. If you plan on doing something stupid, like you're not gonna pull an Edward Snowden where you're like, oh, this is kind of weird, and then just run off. No, that ain't gonna happen, man. There's a particular video game you can play, and this video game has a lot of military equipment, like airplanes, tanks, all this stuff. And I'm not going to name the military game, but I'm sure you guys can probably Google it and take about 30 seconds to figure out that a large portion of leaks that are about airplanes, someone in the Air Force has been on there for clout saying, oh, that's not right. The actual range on this is XYZ, because I work in the hangars and I am a mechanic for the Apache helicopter. So these are the limitations, all because of a video game. They're like, no, this is not accurate. Another guy's like, oh, I work as a tank mechanic and I train people on tanks. The Abrams is actually capable of XYZ. And there are people that are in the game that are like, okay, well, we'll update the system. Not really paying attention to the fact that that intel is real, right? And now the Russians or the Chinese or whoever are now getting that classified information scot-free. They're not paying anybody to be a spy. They're not paying anyone to infiltrate our government. Just some fucking guy was looking for clout on a fucking video game and gave away secrets. You know what I mean? So there are certain people, and of course they got caught, man. Everybody that's done it has been caught. So that's what I mean by people do dumb things sometimes.
Oh shit, this happened. Okay. Because people will take anything out of proportion. I mean, look at all these UFO sightings. We're covering Roswell right now. Just that one UFO sighting became 3 different type of topics of the same UFO. There was bodies. There was, secret material that aliens brought to the thing that's indestructible. I was thinking it was like, when I was talking to Texas about this, I was telling Texas, "What's this material? Is it Captain America's shield or what?"
All I know is that we're like over 70 years from the incident. We are no more closer to finding out what actually happened than the people were within the 2 years that it happened. Because the Air Force is going to put out. Yeah, the Air Force is going to say what they're going to say. They're going to tell you XYZ. And we're going to try to figure it out because the Air Force has an agenda. The agenda is secrecy. The agenda is they can just say, hey, it was a rogue weather balloon. We lost it. Because there's a bunch of, like, during June, July, there's storms and all that roll through off the Rockies, right? So, like, middle of summer, you get random storms. If this was a UFO, and how many radar dishes are there in the New Mexico area?
And there's a lot.
And they picked this thing up. One of the stories was, I got it right here. One of the stories was on July 1st. That's when Roswell Army Airfield, RAAF, White Sands Proving Ground, and the Alamogordo Bombing Range. They all have these sensors, right? They have radar. Now, we know the radar in the 40s wasn't exactly foolproof. The weather could introduce a phenomenon, meaning it would pick up something that's not there. Many times airplanes have been scrambled to go see what was going on radar, and when they get there, there's nothing actually there. It's just weather messing with the sensors. So that is something that has happened before. So it wasn't foolproof. Like what we have now, it's way more advanced, of course. But
Oh yeah,
for the time, it worked. But there was always a possibility of a few, bumps in the road here and there. So they said that this thing that was moving was too quick to be an aircraft, and it would disappear from radar and then reappear back on radar. But they were trying to figure out what the anomaly was. So in order for them to say, well, maybe there's just something wrong with the equipment, that time they actually serviced several of their radar equipment, like dishes and everything, after the fact, to see if there was anything like a malfunction going on. There were no problems. So that was again, that was strange, but there was no reported malfunctions in the equipment. So what they really saw, who knows? My thing is this: if there was an alien crash there, the government would try to be on top of it as quick as possible, right?
Yeah, they'll try to like do what they can to deflect the fact that there was this flying saucer, quotation marks in quotation marks, and there was alien bodies, which I still think it's Pedro, my uncle Pedro, but who knows? You never know.
But actually, after the Roswell thing, they actually, when I was reading, they hired a bunch of different scientists, right? Like real scientists, not these ufologists or whatever. I'm not talking shit on the. I'm not talking shit on the guys, but when I look through degrees. Yeah, I was gonna say when I look through anything in a college, I don't see ufology listed as a degree. So I don't understand that. Like, it's a weird term that they gave themselves.
I feel like you got your general doctor, then you got your like plastic surgeon, and then you got your like your dentist and all that. So you got your scientists, and then you got. I'm gonna get shitted on for this. This is your women's steadies, and then you got your
shit,
and then you got your cryptids, and then now you got your ufologists. Is that what you call them? Ufologists? What the fuck?
Ufologists? Like they're just, I don't know, man.
It's all myths.
I'm not,
bro.
I'm not shitting on people that spend their free time, the only time they have left on the planet.
I think
they spend their free time just looking into UFOs and phenomenon in the sky, because I mean that serves a purpose. Like you need to, you need to keep an eye on shit, and I get it. Nobody's gonna look out for you but you, right? And nobody's gonna tell us anything unless someone pushes the issue. So that's cool, but everything has a healthy dose of skepticism. And we'll cover down the road. Some reports that I believe are way credible. But so here we go. Dr. Robert Wood was hired by I don't know if you know who McDonnell Douglas is. They're a military contractor. McDonnell Douglas hired Dr. Robert Wood, who was a well-known scientist, and they wanted to put together a little panel of scientists to say, hey, we need to investigate these UFOs that have been sighted all over the country, and even some other ones that people have submitted to the U.S. from around the world, just because their governments won't look into it. And they're like, we need to come up with an answer to figure out what these things are. And of like the huge percentage of these UFOs people have seen, they were like misidentified aircraft. Some of them were weather instruments, again, weather balloons. Some of them were the one I'd never believe, swamp gas, reflective light in the sky off of clouds or gas or whatever.
It's like that one guy that always gets it, huh?
I never bought that.
Like when he messes up, he's like, oh, well, I messed up because the sun reflected to that windowsill that winched back and bounced back, hit me in the eyes, and caused me to mess up. Sorry.
Fucking this guy right here, bro, Stanton Friedman, right? He was brought on as an objective nuclear physicist, not just some fucking Yahoo off the street. Nuclear physicist.
So they're bringing in the top guns here, huh?
He became an author out of this because he changed his whole field of study, because a lot of the phenomenon that they were looking through, I think there was like what was it? It was like over 3,000 something solid cases that they were brought up, not just bullshit ones, but solid cases. They dismissed or explained away all but 700 of them, 701, including the Roswell thing, because
Right.
they couldn't explain it because they didn't have any evidence, and they just said that we're going with the government report. But 700 of these, 700 they could not explain. So because of this, it puzzled Friedman really bad.
Right.
And he changed his profession to study this phenomenon. And being a physicist, a nuclear physicist, and having background and all this technical shit, he actually became really, really like heavily focused on this. He became an author. He wrote several books. It was life changing for this guy.
So he's like the Martha Stewart of science and stuff.
No, it's not like that.
That's who he made it sound, bro. Like he's the Martha Stewart.
The Martha Stewart of science. Calm down, bro.
Uh-huh.
Raimi's kneeling down, and he's got this piece of paper in his hand, and it's folded up. Everybody always talks about that. They're like, "Well, what is that little note that he's got?" Well, this guy Friedman wanted to see what was on that note, but so many photos could be easily doctored, or you could just make up your own shit. He spent tons of money, man, trying to find where the negatives to these photos were by the press. He spent tons of money looking for the negatives, found the negatives, and then bought them. He purchased the negatives and then had those digitally scanned, uploaded, and enhanced. And they were able to actually look there's I think there's 3 or 4 photos where you can actually see some of the paper where he's got it folded up in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
But they were able to digitally enhance it, and they were able to decipher a lot of words on that page, and it was just one sheet of paper. And some of the words that they were able to decipher were craft, bodies, misdirect, story, cover or cover up. There's a whole, you can go online.
So basically it'd be like the list of what to do from the whole situation. Basically,
everyone's saying, no, it's not. They were just saying what really happened. That one note, if it is indeed, and it's not anything, it's not like the smoking gun, but there are 3 or 4, like let's say that there's a word that has been used to on that paper they've used to decipher it. They'll have 2 or 3 other options with it. Right. But stringing those words together from what you can see on that page, and it does lean really heavily. Yeah, it leans really heavily into the cover-up side. That's
when shit gets real sus there, huh?
Yeah, like, I mean, before you realize it, bro, you're just sitting here and you're like, man, you have to really look into this. Like, you know what I'm saying? Roswell didn't come back up into like mainstream thought until like the 80s, when there was a few documents that were released. A couple people talked about it. Marcel Jr., the son of Major Marcel, who actually went and supposedly was there during the cleanup operation, and brought the wreckage back to General Ramey and all that stuff. That guy, he had supposedly had a secret diary, and that's where the other story of the second incident happened, where there was crashed UFO saucers.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that stuff. So that's where that whole story bled in and came from. This just like Admiral Byrd's secret diary. Guy right here, Marcel, had a secret diary.
It seems like everybody has a secret diary all of a sudden.
but in almost 20-something years worth of interviews that he gave, he never once mentioned anything about a diary. And some of the things that are written in that diary never came to light during any of his interviews. So,
I think people who keep diaries, who are I feel like people who are in the government that keep secrets a lot, they have to vent somehow. So in order to vent, they can't really talk to anybody about what they see. They got to vent to themselves. So I think that's where the diary comes into play, so they can write their thoughts down, so that it doesn't torment. I feel like it would torment me as a person, having to keep a lot of secrets. It would torment me, I think, without having somebody to vent to. So I think maybe having a diary would be a way to vent.
Valid. That's a valid point. All right.
I'm not a psychologist or anything. I'm not saying I have a PhD in psychology, but I'm saying, like,
You
Me
have a
with
PhD in ufology.
yeah, there you go. You know, you got people always covering the Roswell incident. That's the first. When I think of aliens, I think of Roswell.
I'm a pop a brew, man, because
Go for it, brother.
I'm
It's one of
drinking.
these things.
I'm popping a Voodoo Ranger, Juice Force IPA 9.5.
But I'm just saying, like, the first thing when you hear aliens, that's the first thing that I feel like everybody talks about Roswell.
Mm-hmm.
I've never act unless you're like a super UFO fanatic, the
Yeah.
first thing that I've always heard was Roswell or the Arizona incident.
But fast forward from 47 all the way to 1993, and a New Mexico congressman, Senator Schiff, asked to get documents sent to him, every document they could find pertaining to Roswell. Now, the United States Air Force, which was created at this time, it wasn't just the Army Air Force. The United States Air Force at this time had to go back, and they had to respond because there was mounting pressure. And if you don't remember, in the 90s, the Clintons were all about aliens and UFOs and all of that stuff. So there was like not extreme pressure, but it had came back to being in the public eye again. And then of course we had other series going on. We came and just alien story after story, and people want to know one thing after another, and shit just kept compounding. The Air Force decided we're going to release a document, and they're going to answer this. So the United States Air Force releases this report. It's called the Roswell Report, Fact versus Fiction. All right. And in this, they address all the major points from Roswell. The debris field was not a regular weather balloon. They admit now that it was not a weather balloon, that they admit that they lied, that it was, of course, a specialized balloon. They revealed Project Mogul was an active project at the time, considered secret, and nobody knew about it. Explained why the 509th couldn't look at this specialized balloon or weather balloon with sensors and everything else and say, yeah, guys, it's just a weather balloon, because they had specialized equipment and it was a whole balloon train, and it was not just one big weather balloon. It was a series of them, which actually led into Operation Skyhook, a bunch of these other projects and stuff that we were able to use down the road. So they deny anything about specialized materials, such as the metal, like Mog had said that, you could crumple it up, but it would take its shape again immediately after. They deny anything having to do with that, any foreign or extreme top secret alloys or materials. They deny anything about that. And they also deny that there was any UFO wreckage found, and there were no bodies ever found. So the United States Air Force investigated itself and all of its documents that it had on hand, and then said, we find no wrongdoing on our part, even though it's the Air Force investigating the Air Force. So here's the real question. How trustworthy is that report? Not very trustworthy, in my opinion, because they had to make a second report in 1997.
Yeah,
Sorry, I had to get another sip of this. 1997, the United States Air Force had to address further lingering questions and dissatisfaction by the public and mounting pressure from the public about for the fact that they fucking lied, admitted they lied, and then said they found nothing wrong with them lying, and then didn't really answer a whole lot of the questions that other people wanted to have answered in their original report. So they went ahead and released a new one. They released the Roswell Report, case closed. This is supposed to be the final report. Everything's supposed to be in here. They had to admit the fact that records from March of 1945 until December of 1949 were all destroyed.
Interesting.
Now, the real question is, who authorized that?
Right.
The Air Force said that the documentation they have that they have in hand that says they have in hand that says these documents, all these documents from this date to this date need to be destroyed, wasn't filled out correctly, and there wasn't a particular person that the report pointed
Well,
to give authority and authorization to delete these things.
I think the only person that can give some sort of
Go figure.
authority like that would be probably the Papist, right?
The POTUS.
The POTUS.
Now, if you
POTUS,
yeah, the POTUS. Yeah, if you were the president, or if you were a high-ranking general, maybe a joint chief of staff. I mean, you'd have to be an up there kind of guy, right?
Or the Ministry of Defense, Secretary of Defense, should I say?
They don't really bring a whole lot of new things to the table other than revealing that, yes, they lied. It was a reason that they lied because of Project Mogul. And then a lot of the documents that they would like to go over and turn over have all been destroyed conveniently. And we're not sure who ordered it, but it's gone. They went ahead and mentioned that the bodies, they wanted to address the alien bodies in quotations, that were found all over this supposed Corona crash site.
Interesting.
They said that these alien bodies were dummies.
Me personally, I would assume it would be an Earthcraft. I think. I mean,
so yeah, they're dropping these test dummies, and they're using them to gauge. The reason for this is they're using them to gauge what falls that an airplane, like let's say a pilot, for example, if he was to fall from this height, what would be survivable, worst case scenario type shit if they have to bail out of a plane. The thing with these the reason I'm laughing about it is because these alien bodies that they're saying were dummies, they cite Operation High Jump. Correction to this. I said Operation High Jump. I meant to say Operation High Dive. It didn't actually take place until 1953, 6 years after the fact. So it's another thing that's incongruent. It does not match the story.
It's just maybe it was a different type of high jump than the
chalk
one that
a third. So chalk a third inconsistency up for the UFologists. One of them being the original story being true, and it just being a weather balloon. It was not. There's a mark for them. And 1995, their report there was inconsistencies throughout that as well. And then, of course, they talk about Operation Mogul, which we're not sure if that's entirely true or not, but
right,
it's on the paperwork. We can just go back and look at all the paperwork, except they burned it all for some reason. So there's a second check mark for inconsistencies and very strange occurrences and issues and questions that are unanswered. Now the third one, Operation High Jump, which happened 6 years after the fact, doesn't match up. So there's your third score for these guys.
Right. See, this is why I don't trust government.
So hardly anyone does. There are issues and questions that I have with many of the UFO narratives, right?
Right.
You want to get into that, Mog, before we close?
So my issue with the whole thing is, was it really a weather balloon? Was it really, the material that they said they had? Was it the actual material, or did they just grab the material, store it, get some weather balloon material that was probably wrecked from one of the Project Moguls, brought it to the press release and said, hey, this was part of the wreckage for the thing, to cover up what they really have in their in their little bunker, So my thing is, for what purpose? I know the purpose of why you would cover something up like that. Again, when I just explained, we had probably a high-tech piece of equipment that malfunctioned, fell down. Government was like, oh shit, we can't have this come out, because then our competitors, which Russians, we're going to say competitors, we're not going to say, enemies, because at the time we're just competing to see who is better.
Well, yeah, I think the biggest threat. Yeah.
Right. So that being said, that would be something to understand. But my thing is, why did it have to become aliens? Why couldn't it be, oh, stick with the weather balloon, nonsense? At least that's a little more feasible than there's a UFO up there, and the guy, the farmer, he's all, I saw that thing and it picked me up and shook me like a dog, like, god dang, bro, like,
I'm gonna address some of the inconsistencies, eyewitnesses, and some of the people who have told their stories over the many years.
right.
I'm gonna do a speed run. All right, so Walter Haut, or Hot, right? Haut.
Yeah, hot.
Walter Hot. Yeah, Hot. He claims to have seen UFOs and the UFOs and the bodies, and sworn affidavits that were notarized as he signed them after being cleared medically sane and without any defect by a doctor. The affidavit was notarized and all that. The problem with that is whenever you read through Walter Haut's affidavit, he didn't actually write it. It was actually written by a UFO author whose name I won't mention, but the justification for him writing this affidavit for him was basically, he said, we've conducted interviews over all these years, and all the interviews that we conducted, I basically compiled it into a story, and this is your story. Read it over, which he did, and if you have anything that needs to be changed or anything that's not correct, let me know and we will change it. He basically read it over and said, good enough, and then signed it. So that, in my opinion, that doesn't really prove anything. That just shows that he signed a piece of paper that he didn't write himself, which doesn't mean a lot to me. Colonel Thomas DuBose claims the wreckage in photos are real. So DuBose himself has been pretty annoyed, publicly mentioned being annoyed, because people keep coming up to him and asking him after the fact, hey, they were really UFOs or aliens, you were covering it up. And he said, no, what was in the photographs was really what we brought. That's what was presented to the public, because that's really what it was. So there's another detractor. Jesse Marcel said that, he's made a lot of claims about the UFO thing. He even talked about like being part of the cover up, talked about how he saw, all these different things. You can look into this any deeper if you want to. It's a rabbit hole. Enjoy it or don't, because I didn't, because the deeper you go, the less sense any of it makes. But he even talked about flying one of the wrecked UFOs, landed in the Roswell airfield and doing all that. He was never but he was never a pilot.
That's why I'm saying that's concerning. Like, that's what concerns me.
How did he do it? He didn't explain it.
Yeah, like, again, advanced civilization, a little complicated to comprehend. Let me put my hand in this jelly and all of a sudden make the damn thing move and make it fly everywhere, Like, Jesus, who does that?
So supposedly he figured out how to fly this thing, because he's that badass of a pilot.
I guess, bro. Then that means the whole thing with Dr. Phil is real too. Him being went from plumber to being a psychiatrist. So I mean,
I don't buy that
I can do that too. I can become a pilot too and put my hands in the jelly too and make it fly if I wanted to. Not saying that
why not, bro.
There was jelly involved, guys. I'm just saying, like, I'm just cracking jokes. Stick
your hands in some KY. Stick your hands in some KY and fly around.
You might as well.
Yeah, why not, bro? Just fucking, like, were there joysticks? Like, how do you control that?
Oh Lord, I don't know.
I want him to elaborate. He can't now because he's fucking. The only thing he's pushing up now is daisies, but
it's okay.
Yeah, like, I don't.
Time machine, bro. We'll get into that. We'll get into time machine, and then we'll go back
and
ask him the question, bro. We'll go back and ask him when we learn time travel.
Well, just so you know, when you go backwards in time, you divert into a different. Supposedly, you divert into a different timeline. So that way, you don't break continuity. You can't go back and be your own grandfather and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so here we go. So, like, Jesse Marcel said that he flew the wreckage, one of the wrecked aircraft. I 100% don't believe that to be real. There's no way that can be true. He flew this aircraft, helped cover it up, kept his mouth shut, and that he wanted to speak up whenever they were doing the interview with Dubose and Ramey at the Fort Worth Army Airfield for the press. But he said that he was not at liberty to say, that they told him keep your mouth shut and that's it, or else you're looking, standing threatening shit. You're going to prison rest of your life. That whole thing. Like again, the problem is he claimed to have a degree in physics. He did not. He had no degrees in physics
Again,
of any kind. He was
again.
not a pilot. Yeah, he was not a pilot. He overstated his. Not only overstated, but embellished. They said embellished because they didn't want to say he outright lied. But he overstated and embellished his abilities as an officer or whatever major. As a major, he was just full of shit. In other words, it's the nicest way for them to put it when you read through this.
Well, yeah.
And he worked as an Army intelligence officer, which leads me to believe that he 100% can't be believed, because if you work in Army intelligence, when you're an intelligence officer, that means you are doing what they tell you to do. And if they're telling you, hey, here's a shovel, go spread the shit, add more confusion to what's going on, then you can definitely do that, because that's where you work and that's what you do. Melvin Brown, he claimed to be he was a guard, and he saw the alien bodies when they were moving everything around the Air Force bases there. Or I keep calling it Air Force. Guys, I'm going to call it the Air Force bases.
We're just going to say Air Force.
Because Army Air Force sounds fucking, it's before my time, all right? Just calling it fucking Air Force. So moving stuff on the bases there.
Air Force anyway, so
he said there was little small caskets. He popped them open when no one was looking under these tarps, and there were dead alien bodies there. And supposedly he witnessed one alien that was still alive, and that was the end of that. And all this stuff came out way after the fact. This story was told by his daughter. It was actually told by him. It was told by his daughter after he died. Like many years after he died, she came out saying, well, my dad told me he was a guard there and he did this and saw this. So whenever you look into Melvin Brown's,
you think he finally was before I die, I want somebody to know. So he's told his daughter, and
that sounds great. But the problem is when you look at Melvin Brown's background, there's a few people that have interviewed and talked to people in a roundabout way that mentioned this guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a guard. He was a fucking cook.
Oh shit!
So I guess they fucking pulled him out of
demolition.
They grabbed him out of the fucking kitchen, took his ladle from him, gave him a rifle, and hey, you're gonna guard this top secret alien UFO shit. That could have happened, but I highly doubt
you never know. You never know. It's known to happen from time to time, when shit hits the fan and stuff.
And there's not only military people, bro. Look at I'm gonna name a couple. Well, I'm gonna name two. Fuck it. I got 6 or 7 on here. I'll name two. Two civilians that are not military. One of them was Lydia Sleppy. She was let's see. She claimed that the FBI interrupted her broadcasts. She worked for KOAA something having to do with the news. She was a stenographer, and she did several other things. But she said the FBI showed a hostility toward that. They contacted her and told her to stop the broadcast immediately. They demanded that she stop, or they will lose their license and be taken off the air. There's absolutely no memo. Yeah, there are no memos, and there's no evidence that this happened. But this is a claim that she threw out after the fact.
Damn, bro. So they were planning on taking her whole show from her.
I mean, the FBI obviously the FBI is not they're not very subtle on a lot of shit, but they're
listen here, you're not going to be Oprah if you don't stop.
Now, granted, the FBI doesn't have any memos on this either, but it's the fucking FBI, right? Who's to say they're really going to give you any real information? Because the government lies consistently. Who knows? And Loretta Proctor, she claims to have seen the debris, and she tested it. She watched her dad and some of the other people hit it with hammers, try to set it on fire, bend it, do all of that shit. The only problem with Loretta is she's even, I believe she's in a few videos that recorded her testimony a few times. And originally, when her testimony came out after the event, she said that she never actually saw any debris, had handled it, or had anything to do with it. She just literally kind of just brought it up after it was already out there down the road, added that to her story. So after initially saying that she had only witnessed her dad talking about it and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. But there's a few people that I believe are detractors to the situation of it being a UFO cover-up. Now again, everything's stirred in the shit, so it's kind of hard to tell what's what exactly. There's a web of lies.
You got Brazel who went to the crash, right? Got some stuff,
later changed the story,
and then all of a sudden changed the story. Cheers. He changes the story. Ironically, he changes the story. I say ironically after the whole story changes, then he ironically changes it to pieces of a weather balloon. That's basically what he's describing. Let's just be real here. He's describing the weather balloon without saying it's a weather balloon. I'm skeptic. I'm a skeptic to a certain sense. I'm the skeptic that if I could touch it, I can see it, then it's real kind of thing. I'm that type of skeptic. I believe, me personally, the alien thing was just one of the throw-offs. I think it was actually an advanced aircraft that we ourselves may have created, and we took it for a test drive, and it fell. Like it failed somehow, and like it crashed and hit the shit, and they're like, "Oh shit, we need to get this covered up because we don't want our enemies to find out what we're doing." For one, we are in the race with China and Russia. During that time.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. It was Russia first, and then before all this stuff, we don't want them to know what they have, and they sure as hell don't want us to know what they have. So it's kind of like one of those: what's mine is mine. Keep your mouth shut, and vice versa. So I think that's what really happened. Me personally, they just kind of threw aliens in there to throw people off, to make it seem like, oh, it's a paranormal kind of thing. You know what I mean? But that's what I think.
That's a pretty solid theory, because it doesn't lean so much that you exclude or completely just deny the ability of there being aliens, but you're looking for a more man-made reason for it. Right. And it's not too far-fetched to think that the American government, or the military specifically, is working on secret weapons, because we did that in World War II. The Nazis did it in World War II. The Russians have already fucking tied their shoes at the end of that shit. But once they got their shit together, they were working on their secret stuff too. So I mean, it's not so much that it's out of the question. I think that's a pretty good idea. My thought is this: the reason they would say it's aliens is, for one, it's easily deniable, and if you get people focused on something like that,
it brings in skeptics. It brings in everything.
It's a perpetual fuck. That's all it is. It like from this point when you bring it up until infinity, right? It'll never stop.
Like on Hustle.
You never fly. Yeah, you never fly close enough to the sun where you crash the ship, right?
Right.
You fly just close enough to where you can blend fact with what actually happened with your fiction, so that way the narrative again is confusing. You never have a direct line of this is exactly what happened. This is what somebody did. This is their version of what happened. Like you continue to blend the two. Just the sheer amount of disinformation and disinformation agents that have been dispatched to all of these things over the years has led me to believe that I'm not disputing the aliens are real or not. I'm not saying that they are one way or the other. To be honest, it makes no difference to me. I don't care. If they are, cool. If they're not, also cool. I don't care. But in terms of public optics, if you say it's aliens and everybody goes down chasing the alien rabbit trail, that gets them off of what you're actually doing. Right. And next time something happens, it was a cover up. Had to do with aliens because it's technology we don't understand. Right. Well, yeah, because no one's mentioning that McDonnell Douglas or Lockheed Martin or Skunk Works or any of these guys are working on any of these things that are like the SR-71. Like that was one of those things that, super high tech, super secret shit. The stealth equipment we had, the B-2 bombers, all of these things that may have been witnessed back then. Like, oh, it was a triangle, It was a stealth bomber. It was a stealth bomber, man, in the 60s and 70s.
You sure wasn't the Star Destroyer from Star Wars? Show him the clip.
I don't know anything about. You're a Star Wars guy. You tell me. But like all of this stuff, just it lines up. It lines up in such a way that it's an infinite get out of jail card, or it's an infinite amount of shit to stir into the pot, so that you muddy up the waters, so that you always have something to fall back on. And it's an old faithful. It's the look at this hand while this hand is doing something that's not supposed to, right? It's the perpetual get out of jail free card for the vast majority of what it is that is being applied to.
That. I can actually see that. It's like that dog that's running around and chasing his own tail, and then he sees a squirrel and he stops and says squirrel. Mm-hmm. And then he's more focused on that than when he was chasing his tail.
Well, in this case, it'd be the opposite. They're trying to get you to stop chasing the squirrel and to get you to chase your own tail so you don't get anywhere. But that's a pretty good analogy. So like whenever you think about it, however you want to think about it, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I'm not a denier. I'm not like there's no way that they exist. I have no idea. I don't know. I think that pretty much covers everything. I don't have anything else to add. Mowgli, do you?
I really don't, man. I mean, what we said was solid research. And other than that, guys, I'm Mog and my co-host Tex, and we'll see you on the next one.
Catch you guys later. Y'all be safe.
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing.